Top à 0-20 secondes. Largage du MAVKM. Allumage triétage. À tous de DDO. Attention pour le décompte final. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Top. Et décollage. Tous les paramètres à bord sont normaux.
Wow, always impressive. There she goes, hauling herself against the gravity of our planet, which of course is pulling us back down, making life possible here on Earth, but making it very difficult to leave. We're burning 5 engines, one on the main core stage, one on each
Les
of
attitudes du
those.
lanceur suivant les 3 axes sont nominales. Tous les paramètres à bord sont normaux.
One on each of those boosters. He's telling us that everything's going according to plan. Sylvain, your next 2 satellites have taken off.
Yes, you're right. Now we are very pleased that we are off the ground, for sure. We still have a long journey ahead of us, nearly 4 hours, but it seems to be a very good start. Yeah.
Take a look at the bottom of the screen. You can see on the left the altitude. We're 16 kilometers above the
Les
Earth,
paramètres de structure du lanceur sont nominaux.
and our cameras have picked up more images there of Soyuz as it hurtles across the sky. If we're lucky, we might even see the boosters falling away in about half a minute. At the bottom of the screen is the distance from the pad.
Les paramètres propulsifs sont conformes à l'attendu.
That's the distance if you were to draw a line along the Earth, and on the right-hand side, the speed. We can hear the launcher as it flies over, the delayed sound there. And this is the scheduled moment for the boosters to fall away. We don't need them anymore. They have done their job. They have burnt their propellant. And we can see superb images here from a previous
Séparation des
launch.
propulseurs, les blocs D, V, G, D.
And we have confirmation that the separation of the boosters has indeed occurred. So we're burning the main core stage now. Folk here call it the Block A, Sylvain.
Yes, you're right. It burns for just under 5 minutes. So it burns liquid oxygen and kerosene.
Little word about confirmations. You might have noticed that we get schedule events
Stabilisation correcte suite à la séparation des blocs.
and then slightly later we get the confirmation. That's because we are seeing key moments happening at the right time. But we get the confirmations of those milestones just fractionally later. That's perfectly normal.
Yeah, you're right, because it takes a little time for information to get from the launcher to the range operations manager here in the Guiana Space Center. So that's because it goes via Moscow. He calls out the confirmations once he gets them. And so what we are seeing are the milestones when they are scheduled to happen.
There at the front of the vehicle is the fairing. We saw it earlier. It's housing the satellites. They're inside there. It's got several jobs. Most notably, it's protecting the satellites from the rigors of the launch.
Yeah. So we are having, for instance, acoustic vibrations at liftoff, so very loud friction. So the launcher is flying through the dense part of the atmosphere at very high speed, so it's very hot outside the fairing.
And that friction is dissipating now, because if you look at the bottom of the screen, we're 114 kilometers above the Earth, and we don't need the fairing anymore, so it's just fallen away. We've had confirmation, and we can now see your 2 babies.
Yes, yeah, we see them quite well. So we see the golden part there is a Fregat, and then on top, you see our 2 satellites with the dispenser in the middle to hold them.
If you look on the right-hand side of the screen, you can still see it there.
Ah, yes, correct. Then you see now we start to see the panel that will face Earth when it is in orbit. So you see the antennas.
Which ones are the antennas?
The round part. The round part, there is the navigation antenna, the one which will broadcast navigation signals. And then as it turns, you see now the solar panels, the rectangular part.
And they're the 2 grey rectangles facing us they're going to deploy once we separate the satellites and inject them onto their orbit. You get a better picture of them there.
Yes, you see them now again.
And they'll unfold like a butterfly coming out of its cocoon. So we are now getting the separation of the second stage. We lit or ignited our third stage engine. And we have confirmation of that we have ignited the third stage engine, which we do before we get rid of the second stage engine. That's a peculiarity of Soyuz. Here we go. Let's take another look at that launch earlier this evening. That was 5.5 minutes ago nearly. Pretty impressive. Never get tired of seeing that.
Les paramètres propulsifs du bloc I sont nominaux.
There are various different bodies involved in the governance of the Galileo program, Sylvain. There's
yes, you're right. So ESA is the architect of the system. So we design and develop the system, and we are in charge of making it work. The GSA is the entity in charge of providing the services, and of course the European Commission is the program manager.
Just to explain to anyone who hasn't seen a launch before, top right-hand side of the screen is what we call the trajectory. The white dot. The white dot on that curve is the actual position of the launch vehicle. The curve itself is the planned trajectory of the vehicle. At the bottom you can see we're coming up nearly heading towards 5 kilometers a second. This is a hugely important flagship project for all Europeans. So some important strategies there from the EU, and the European Commission has taken over the role of funding Galileo. Our flight path takes us out. We're heading out across the Atlantic right now from the northeastern tip of South America, which is where we took off from.
La stabilisation du lanceur est conforme à l'attendu.
And we'll be heading out across Europe. We'll head out across Russia, across China, Southeast Asia, heading south towards Australia, and that's where we'll be separating our satellites. And we are tracking the vehicle using ground stations as she flies over.
Yeah. Many of them. So we'll have a boat in the middle of the Atlantic, after the first one. Then we will have a station in Azores, Santa Maria. Then in Osagel, Toulouse. And then we will lose visibility for some minutes, and we will arrive near Australia. Perth station will take it at that moment.
Nominale du bloc I. Et décollage.
So what we've been talking about here is telemetry. The launcher is sending signals to the ground stations. And we've had the signal at the station in Perth. Here we have separation now of the third stage. It's burnt its fuel. We don't need it anymore. 9.5 minutes into the flight.
Extinction et séparation du bloc I.
And we're now starting the next phase of the journey. Fregat, the upper stage, is taking the wheel. You can see there the third stage moving away. And Fregat is that gold structure. It's got 6 spherical tanks, and they're organized in a circle.
Yeah, 4 for propellants and 2 of them for avionics, a bit like we have in a cockpit of an aircraft. So for flight control systems, navigation, communication, and so on. And the satellites are attached using a special dispenser on top of it.
Fregat's getting ready to switch on its engine. It's in what we call the pre-burn phase. It's giving a quick burst of acceleration to push the fluids back in the tanks, and that's to make sure that there's enough propellant to ignite the engine properly. It's a little bit like when you're in a car and you put your foot on the accelerator. So here is the scheduled first ignition of the Fregat Upper Stage for its first burn. It's going to burn for just over 13 minutes, and Fregat's job is a very important one because Fregat's really has, as we said earlier, taken the wheel now. It's going to deliver our satellites to their drop-off point in space, and it's going to take it another 3 hours and 38 minutes